Hey there, welcome back to 16 Stops, a podcast. My name is Josh, and I'm here with Brandon.
What's up?
And today we're going to talk about our top 5 favorite cameras.
Of all time.
Of all time. All right, so anyways, this episode 8, is significant for us for a few reasons. The main one being there's this sort of idea that you have to get past 7 before you know that the podcast is going to work. So shout out to Tom Buck.
Let's go, Tom.
Let's go. So what's the whole story behind that, Brandon? You've heard that too, right?
I have, but really only from you. I didn't know that there was like a, what do they call that? An inflection point that you have to get past. But apparently, after listening to you and watching Tom Buck's videos, he did like an entire like podcast episode video. He was like, you got to get past 7. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm pumped for sure. So we're excited about this. Sorry we took a week off. I'm going to sort of blame Brandon for like hanging out with his family and going on vacation. So
I'll take that blame. I went to LA. I got out of the snow.
All right. So celebrating your kid's birthday. You guys went to like the zoo and Universal and stuff like that. Looked cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Okay. So and another thing about the scheduling with the podcast is I've also heard from Matt D'Avella. I'm sure you guys know who Matt D'Avella is. When you're trying to get a routine down, the one thing you can do to turn something into a routine is to not skip twice. Mm-hmm. So we're not like taking 2 weeks off. We took 1 week off. We're getting back at it. So I think we're good. But what throws a curveball in the mix here is that NAB is coming up pretty soon. So I think we're gonna try to do a live stream Monday morning. So that would be the 17th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's the 17th.
All right, so we're going to try to do it in person and from Las Vegas, and it'll be our experience at NAB.
And we might have some special guests.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
That's the special guest symbol. So if you guys are going to NAB, let us know. We'll try to hook up or whatever. We're really excited about that. So Brandon and I can actually hang out in real life. All right, so personal news before we get on to news and rumors. Brandon, how's your Q2? You posted an epic video, which we'll leave in the description.
Thank you.
It was really well done. So
Appreciate
I think that really did sum up your experience so far. But how you feeling about that whole situation?
It's an awesome camera. It's really hard to deny. Like if you pick up that camera and then pick up any other camera, every other camera is going to feel cheap compared to it. I had some frustrating bits. It's an entirely new system, and so getting used to a new system, there's always a learning curve. But the more I use it, the more I enjoy it. And I've always been like really a 35 guy. Like I love shooting at the 35 focal length, and it's 28, which is really wide. But I think for just some of the everyday carry stuff, it actually works. So I don't know. I'm in a weird spot where I'm like, do I keep this? Do I return it? Do I keep my X100V? Do I sell that? Do I get something else? Kind of nuts.
Yeah. So if people don't know, you're really looking for a more dedicated photography camera that's sort of very tactile and you're very connected with it and that sort of stuff. So
for my personal photography stuff, I have the R5C, and I've got lenses for that for the professional work. Like if I'm doing sports or if I'm doing a lifestyle shoot and somebody's paying me and I need to be fast, that's absolutely the camera I'd take. But when I'm going on my own trips and doing stuff for me, I want a different experience and a different process.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to, hearing where that direction goes. And I know we've been chatting a bunch about it. So we've had more saga. The saga continues, I should say, with the audio stuff. But we will see that for the next episode. We're going to have a whole big thing about it. No spoilers, but it'll be good, I promise. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Some good stories and stuff. Anyways, so I think the big news over the last 2 weeks is, of course, the Sony ZV-E1 got dropped.
And it blew up the internet and all the YouTubers.
Man, there were so many videos. We said 50 over under. I didn't go and count, but I don't know, man. It might have been around 50.
It was, at first when you posted, we were talking about this. It wasn't anywhere near 50. And then the dominoes just started falling, and it was plop, 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 plop. And there were so many.
I know. I made a reaction video on the day of announcement, and
you actually contributed to the count. What if you were number 51? That would.
But I didn't have the camera. Do I count? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
You still count, bro.
It wasn't part of the embargo drop. It didn't go on at 10 a.m. like it came out later that day.
It was D-Day, though. It was D-Day.
But in that video, if you haven't seen it, I talk about the ZV-E1 versus the FX3, and I actually had a screenshot of all the ZV-E1 videos in the video. So anyways, so let's talk about this for a few minutes. Otherwise, we could ramble on forever. So $2,200. To me, the big thing was the price, where that was going to land up. I had heard somewhere between 22,000, 2,500, so 2,200. I think there's a little bit of confusion about this camera. I think there's some mixed opinions too. I think from everybody has a different kind of feeling about this. So the first thing I want to say is that you got to think about who this camera's for. Who's the target marketed here? And I think for a lot of people, it's for people that don't have a ton of camera experience that want just a really good quality image. So it's got a lot of auto features, some of this new stuff in there. If you don't know, it's the A7S III, FX3, FX6 sensor in there. So great image, great low light, great dynamic range, great autofocus. It has the new autofocus from the A7R5 with the AI chip. Some cool features.
Not to interrupt, but I'm sure we'll get to this. Do you think that everybody that owns the A7R5 or like another camera that doesn't have that just feels like that's a swift kick in the balls?
Well, we're going to get into that for sure, and that was a great thing to throw in there. So the thing about the A7R5 autofocus is there's another chip. They're calling it the AI chip. So I think that kind of limits putting some of that stuff in the older cameras because it doesn't have the hardware for it.
Makes sense.
That's the way I understand it.
Can't go backwards.
Can't go backwards. But there is some features in there that are strictly software that people are still complaining about. But I think the main thing is going to be the overheating in this camera. I've heard it overheats in a lot of the basic modes, and I've been talking about that since I started hearing about this camera, because you take a big camera and you shove it in a small body, it's probably going to overheat. So this is not. Things get hot, and so it does. Like, even though the A7S III, same sensor and processor, doesn't overheat and doesn't have a fan, it has a much bigger body and has like some sort of cooling system in there that's also in the A7R5. So it can handle the heat. So this is not going to be a replacement for most people for their A7S III or their FX3, because you're not going to get the long run times.
Are you going to get one?
No. As of right now, I mean, things always change, right? But as of right now, I didn't put in a pre-order. I have an FX3. Like, I don't need a smaller version of that's more limited. That's not going to help me out in my workflow. So are you going to order one?
It intrigues me because of its small size and form factor. Like, the FX3 was so much fun to use, but it just didn't seem like the right time to like move over to Sony. This being half the price, I'm like, whoa, it's tempting, especially for what I would shoot with. Very small clips. Like, if I'm vlogging, I'm not like vlogging for like a 15-minute clip at a time. It's like a minute-long clip at a time. And I was never one that overheated the R5. So it intrigues me, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting release. I think it really fits in line with Sony just taking all the stuff that they have and then like throwing it together, and here's a new camera with a few more software features. I think that's kind of what we're seeing for a while. I think they're going to milk that sensor for a bit. Like we talked about with the kit lens, my prediction about that was correct, that it's coming with the 28 to 60 or 28 to 70 or whatever it is. So there's no wide angle kit lens for their vlogging camera.
Which is, yeah. You got cinematic mode, but no wide angle.
Yeah, and I think I want to take a step. One thing I realized when I started making that video is I wanted to kind of take a step back and think about who this camera's for, because people like us who are using cameras with the more advanced features, more manual, all that stuff, like we look at this camera and think, okay, cinematic vlog mode is a gimmick or whatever. If you guys know what we're talking about, it like puts black bars on it.
I think it's kind of cool.
I think it's cool too. Like, you just hit a button and it looks cool. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, like. Anyways, I think these are going to help a lot of people. Like, people are going to have fun with this camera, so
yeah,
it's cool.
I think so.
All right. So we already hinted at this, but let's talk about firmware updates for Sony, because I think one thing I keep hearing over and over, and especially with this release, is like all these new features, why can't we get them in the A7S III, the FX3, the A1, right? Why can't they update their firmware? And I'm frustrated as a Sony owner and user, but also as someone who reviews and talks about these cameras and recommends them to people. I've also seen a lot of comments about this, that people are just frustrated. They're like, if I buy a camera, it's not going to get supported. So every camera company has its own like quirks and methods of their madness and their strategy, but Sony will just not update their cameras, and people are getting mad.
It's a really, yeah. Canon and Sony are kind of like the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like how they build brand loyalty. Like, Sony seems to take the approach of, we will throw everything we can into the camera, and then once we sell it to you, you're like, we absolve ourselves of, any sort of support other than minor bug fixes. And then Canon's cripples the shit out of their camera. But you get updates that make it better for the next 3 or 4 years. So
I don't know which is better, man. I mean,
I don't
always tell
either.
I always tell people buy the camera for what it is now. If you get an update, that's cool. But when you see cameras that have the same hardware, and it's like, why can't I get that? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like, you know what I mean? So
It's frustrating for sure.
yeah. So I hope they change their mind on this. There's a lot of people out there that are being very vocal about this for the last year or so, and people that have influence over people buying stuff. You know what I mean? And have, you know, contacts at Sony and stuff like that. So we'll see. All right. So keep with that in mind. Let's talk about the Canon firmware updates because they are going nuts with firmware updates right now.
Yeah.
And it was funny. They released a whole thing about firmware updates like the day after the CD1.
They're like,
So-
we see your marketing and we'll raise you an update.
So first of all, the R5 update, which we talked in depth about, we got pixel shift, which
Dude, that was epic. That was
And we didn't-
so. How many butthurt people were out there was just epic. I really thought there was going to be a lot more, and you know, we know that they're planning on trickling more out over the next like few months, but I thought for sure a 400 megapixel pixel shift wasn't going to be the only thing, and it was, and that was just.
okay. So if you don't know what we're talking about, it like uses the IBIS system to shift the sensor around to take it stitches multiple photos together somehow and gives you a 400 megapixel image. So it's cool tech. Like I'm never going to use it as a video shooter, even as a photographer. I don't know how useful it is. I think people were disappointed, myself included. I actually returned my R5 because I was just like, this is.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I don't
Also,
think
let
you
me just
told
talk
me.
about the. Yeah, let me talk about the R5 for a second. I started using it. The autofocus is not as good as I remember it being. And after
In
using
video.
the R6 in video, yes, let me specify. Actually, can't everyone know that I'm talking about video? I don't take photos, so.
That's the thing. We're getting new eyes on, so we kind of have to like.
Okay. All right. Thank you,
Specify
Brandon.
that Josh doesn't do photography. He's just video. There's nothing wrong with that. But when he refers to the R5's autofocus being bad, it's not that great in video.
It really isn't. And I remember being decent at the time, like 2 years ago when it came out, or almost 3 years ago. But I'm using the R6 Mark II, the R7, and the R6 Mark II has like the newest firmware or newest autofocus system. And there's a big difference between those two in video. So I was losing shots. There was one, I was just standing talking to the camera outside, like super well lit, and it was like losing me.
It's just
I'm just like, anyway, so that got sent back. And partly it was because of the lame firmware update. I was like, ugh, get rid of this thing while I still can return it. So there is supposedly rumors about some other big updates that will be coming out later in the year, and there'll be a final big update called version 2.0. I don't know. These are rumors. So maybe we'll see some more stuff. It seems like they're just kind of stringing this camera along until we get to the R5 II, which is fine. But there's limitations to that camera for sure. All right, so let's talk about the other updates. There was the R5C has a pretty significant update for a couple reasons. The language was it improves the quality of C-Log 3 when shooting in XF, AVC, or MP4 formats. And the result of this was now it is Netflix approved.
yeah.
So for those people who care about that stuff, most of
I
us,
can sell my vlog to Netflix.
yeah. So if you do have a Netflix original, like you're gonna be able to get whatever camera you want. Like, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, the guy's like, God damn it, I got this camera and now I can't shoot my Netflix special.
So,
Oh,
so shout out to Brian at Loud and Clear who calls this the Netflix firmware. So we're gonna call it the Netflix firmware from now on because I like that. So Brandon, you installed this on your R5C and you did notice a difference, right?
yeah, it's not doing any better in the low end. It's not nearly like the C70, but there was a pretty substantial increase in dynamic range on the high end. So
Interesting. Okay.
And that was kind of like my beef with the R5 and C-Log 3 anyway. It was there, and the R5C, I guess. C-Log 3 just wasn't doing very well in the highlights, and the C-Log 3 and the R5C now, God, so many names or numbers and letters. But it does a whole lot better, and now I don't have to shoot raw to get that higher dynamic range in the top end. So I've been using it a lot, and I really like it.
Do you think it's pretty similar to the RAW in the R5C?
Yeah, other than the low end.
The low end. Okay, so this is kind of what we talked about with our C-Log 4 idea. It seems like this is a new shift of that curve because it's shifting that highlight part of the curve over further, closer to the
Yeah, I wonder if they do come out with a C-Log 4, if they're literally just going to take that update and throw it in the new mirrorless cameras and call it C-Log 4.
Right. There's also the idea that they're coming out with some crazy new cameras that have like 18 or 20 stops of dynamic range, and that's what C-Log 4 will be. I don't know. But either way, I'm glad to see they're updating it. It seemed like a pretty vague update, like improve the image quality. So anyways, there was also some other minor updates in there for the R5, some for the R3, and also the 1DX Mark III. So they're still updating that camera. And now, shortly after that, they announced there's more updates coming for all their cinema cameras, all the current ones, R5C, C70, C300 Mark III, C500 Mark II, sometime in the summer. And
autofocus and battery life, I think.
Yeah, power save mode improvements. It says it'll give you approximately 30% in 4K 60. Again, I don't know what that means exactly.
Let's see an Apple diagram, a Mac diagram. You're here.
Versus the old one. One thing that they had in there was quicker switching between photo and video. So I'm glad they updated that because that was a pain point for some people who are actually using it as a hybrid camera. And some other stuff about, let's see, clear scan and shutter mode, reducing flicker. So a couple more things here, and there'll be some other stuff coming to the other cameras as well. So just more updates, man. I'm not gonna get into all those details, but it's cool to see them supporting their cameras, and I think that's as we said, like a big comparison with what Sony's doing. So I don't know.
Nice work, Canon.
So there's two rumored RF tilt shift lenses coming out, a 14mm f4 and a 24mm f3.5. So I've never used a tilt shift lens.
Neither have I.
Have you?
I have not.
Okay.
Are we in the news and rumors now? Have we gone?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I think I just naturally transitioned.
Okay. Normally we announce it.
Yeah.
News and rumors, but
Okay,
I'm lost, bro.
Yeah, sorry.
My editing brain's thinking like, oh shit, did I miss the opportunity to put in the graphic?
Well, we went right into the.
We're good. We're good. I'll figure it out. Even if I have to just do it right now.
Okay. A couple more things. I want to get onto the main stuff for today. So they're announcing that there's going to be more eye-controlled autofocus coming to more Canon cameras. That was in the R3. That's where you like look and it focuses on stuff. Also, yeah. So we'll see about that. I've heard mixed reviews on that, so I'm not really sure. Fuji canceled their X Summit, which was supposed to be in April.
They X'd their summit.
The X Summit. Yeah. So anyways, just kind of cruising through that. I want to get to the main topic, Brandon. We're going to talk about our favorite cameras. And
I'm
so we're
pumped
really
for this.
Yeah, so we're both really excited to talk about it, but also the fact that we got a lot of people to send in videos and emails. So we're going to include that in this video. So first of all, I guess we'll just roll the videos.
Should I just roll that right now? Let's just roll it. Roll that clip.
Josh and Brandon, favorite camera of all time. It's kind of an easy one. It is the Sony a7S III. Even Sony knows this camera is so good that instead of iterating on it, they were like, let's just take the same processor, same sensor, and we'll make the FX3, and then we'll take the same processor, same sensor again, and make the ZV-E1, but pretty much it's just an a7S III and two other bodies. They can't make it better. It'd be hard to make this camera better.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Caleb Brunko, and my favorite camera by far is the Fujifilm X-E4. And this is for the simple fact that it is the most fun camera I have ever owned and ever used. It does not have the best specs by any means, but it simply makes taking photos fun. I use Canon R6s and a Red Komodo for my day job, and while those cameras are amazing, every time I pick them up, it just feels like work. Whereas whenever I pick up the X-E4, it's usually going out on a little photo trip or taking photos with my wife, and that to me is more important than specs. Also, you get an amazing 26 megapixel sensor paired with all of Fujifilm's film recipes, and it just makes for the most fun experience. So there you go. Probably not a very common choice for favorite camera, but the Fujifilm X-E4 is absolutely my favorite camera I have ever used.
Hey Josh and Brandon, this is Tom. I wanted to share a little bit about favorite cameras. I have a lot of cameras that I love and that I might consider my favorites, like the A7 IV that I'm filming this on right now. But there are a few that come to mind that I wanted to share with you specifically for this episode. So the first, arguably one that I couldn't ignore would be the Canon EOS R. I think this is one of the ones that helped Josh and I like connect for the first time. This camera really opened up a lot for me with amazing autofocus, really good image quality, and even though the 4K is limited, it was kind of my first dip into the world of 4K where I saw a genuine difference in image quality. And I don't know if you know this. Do you know what a pirate's favorite Canon camera is? You might think it's the R, but 'tis the C. Like the C70, C200. If I had to list a favorite camera currently, it would be one that I did not expect to love as much as I do, and that is the Sony FX3. This camera is so amazing. The image quality is great. I have the A7S III, which I absolutely love, but the benefit of the FX3 is I really do love the form factor. I've got the tilt-a-cage with the camcorder grip on the side. And the audio handle, I put the Condor Blue mount here to kind of extend it a little bit and add some more like sturdiness to it. And this camera, I bought it because the A7S III just wasn't available at the time. There was a period where they were impossible to get. And so I got the FX3 thinking it would be pretty good. And it has been my main camera now for like a year and a half. And I just love this camera so much. So I think this has earned, let's put it that way, this has earned the title of my favorite camera. But I do also have one very special camera that I want to include in this, which I haven't used in a while, and that's this, the Sony RX100 Mark V, because when I started my YouTube channel, I was so kind of up in my head about trying to make things as good as possible. And at the time, DSLRs didn't really have good autofocus. So I had like a Canon 6D that I had to manually focus with no flip outs. It was this whole process to make anything. I wanted to get something that would encourage me to just make stuff as a flip up screen. And that's it. There's no room to even plug in a microphone. You can't swap out the lens or anything. So this is it. Almost all of like the first 50 videos on my channel were made just with this camera. It really helped me get into the mode of just making stuff and sharing it and getting comfortable with that. And after that is when I got more comfortable jumping back into the world of cameras with interchangeable lenses and trying to like level up the production value a little bit. Anyway, I love your guys' show. I look forward to every episode every week. And I know that the name is 16 Stops, but it should actually be called 0 Stops because once I start listening, I can't stop.
What's up, everyone? My name is Thomas Kovacic, and I'm a freelance cinematographer as well as a YouTuber. That was also a question from Brandon and Josh. What is your favorite camera if you had to pick one? And it's tough because I own two cameras. I have the Sony FX3 as well as the Canon C70, and I love them both for so many different reasons. And it's such a tough choice, but if I had to pick one to do everything, it'd be the Canon C70. The C70 is just the perfect package. You get this insane sensor, the DGO sensor that's found in the C300 Mark III, which was a $10,000 camera. You get built-in audio, insane battery life, and the internal NDs in C-Log2, and everything combined just makes it so convenient and so easy to use. And I feel like with this camera, I can get an image that is pretty much 100% done straight out of camera once I throw on my LUT. Using the solid internal NDs inside the camera, C-Log2 is super easy to work with. The dynamic range out of this camera is truly out of its own league. So yeah, the FX3 is such a good camera and I use it for a lot of different things, especially for travel, but it can't really do as much stuff as my C70 can. At least in the workflow wise, the C70 is just a lot quicker. You just need a lens, mic, small battery, some little SD cards, and you're pretty much good to go. Whereas the FX3, it needs a lot more to get it up and running, at least for a lot of the dock run and gun stuff that I do. But yeah, the C70 is great. It's like $5,000 and it is a fantastic camera. So it's probably a surprising pick, but that is my camera of choice.
My favorite camera right now is the Red Komodo 6K. Just such a small form factor and R3D codec, but I think this might actually be my new favorite camera. It's the Red V Raptor XL. It's pretty sick, but I still love this Komodo.
Yo, so my favorite camera of all time is this right here, the Canon R6. Now, I've gone through my share of cameras over the last 15 years. I always find myself upgrading within a year. I've had this for 3 years now. It's my second mirrorless camera, and I don't foresee myself upgrading for this camera for a long time. It's not quite future-proof like the R5. The R5 is coming up next, but right now I love the R6. I love the log profiles in it. No longer overheats, which is good. The only downside is record limit, but I'm not recording for 30 minutes at a time anyway. But yeah, to summarize, this is the best camera of all time in my eyes, for now.
Hey guys, Josh Brandon, 16 Stops, fantastic podcast. As far as my favorite camera of all time, it's going to have to be the Canon 5D Mark II. Now, I've had so many crazy, awesome cameras, but that one definitely of all time if I had to pick one. So, all right, guys, keep up the great work. Catch up with you later.
How great was that video?
Oh, wait.
I got this. Josh, how great were those videos?
They were awesome. Super cool. Everyone sent those in. And it's also really interesting to see, before I reveal my, favorite ones, that some of them are in there, but also some of them are not, of course. And it's interesting because it's not always like the best camera. It's like the camera that people have an experience with or was really important in their creative career, or they have memories with it. It could mean a lot of different things. So very cool.
For sure. Yeah, this is definitely not a best list. This is a favorite list. Like this is why it's our favorite. Also, I want to personally thank Tom Buck for shooting an entire YouTube video and included that. I was like, pretty much everybody that I reached out to see if they wanted to be involved, and Tom was definitely on the top of the list since he's been such a great supporter. I was like, Tom, I know you're a busy dude. Keep it to like 15, 30 seconds. Just shoot it vertically if you want, whatever. And then he sends this awesome 3-minute long video.
That's Tom for you. Yeah, a big fan of Tom, and he's been so supportive of the podcast. So, all right, so we got a couple emails too I want to share because we do love video stuff, but people did email me as well. So first one's from Chadwick Schultz. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Sorry, Chadwick. I love the new podcast. I got to say my favorite camera of all time was actually my first big boy camera. It's the legendary Panasonic DVX 100A that I bought when I was in film school. Spent all my loan money that was for textbooks on it, and I was broke and in debt. But it was one of the first video cameras to shoot 24p video, which was super cool to me at the time. Final Cut Pro and Cinema Tools had a way to remove the pull down and post, and that began my lifelong obsession with video editing workflow. So, Chadwick, thank you for that.
Dude, that's pretty rad.
Yeah,
I've never even
sure.
heard of that camera. I got to go look at it now.
Yeah, I don't even, well, it's DVX, so, it's like before my time with video. So, and then the next one is from Dan Weinberg. My favorite camera is the Canon 70D because it was my first, and you never forget your first. That's true. I got it because it's what the legendary YouTuber Casey Neistat used to shoot with during his daily vlog era. So I think all of us keep up the podcast. It's a lot of fun, Dan. All right, so thanks, Dan. I think a lot of us were influenced by watching Casey and using his 70Ds and all that. So
that's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get into our discussion, Brandon. A couple of ground rules here. So first of all, as you said earlier, ground rules. I like to lay out the format so people know what to expect.
Yeah.
So like you said, these aren't the best cameras. These are our favorite cameras, and we're going to go through them. And I also want to have a disclaimer here that just because we don't mention your favorite camera doesn't mean that camera's not good.
Those jerks.
They didn't mention the whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna we say this disclaimer knowing full well there will be no less than 10 comments being like, you totally ignored what. And the other funny thing is that they will only watch 4 minutes into this discussion and then exit out and then type that comment. So
anyways, we're assuming that this is all how it's gonna go down after being on YouTube for so long.
Just come fight me in the comments.
So the format and the rules here, we're going to go from 5 to 1. We're just going to go back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's that complicated.
Okay. Brad, you want to start with number 5?
Sure. Number 5 for me is the Canon R5. It is a camera that came out way ahead of its time. We just talked about the updates that are coming to it. It's still a very viable camera today. It is an absolute workhorse of a camera. I got that camera coming from a Fuji X-T3 for professional work. and it never let me down as a professional camera. No matter what environment I took it into, the images I shot with it, which were pretty much all photography, absolutely amazing. Fast, functional camera. Just love it.
Yeah, it still holds up really well. And I remember when it got announced, of course, there was all the whole saga with overheating. But when they announced that, when those rumors started coming out in like, summer of 2020, and it was like, it's going to do what?
Yeah. It just seemed way too good to be true. Like, these are fantasy unicorn specs. Like, who the hell thinks it's going to shoot 8K RAW full frame with, face detection autofocus?
It does it. I mean, it doesn't do it for very long, but it does it.
Yeah. But obviously the camera does have some cons to it, but it was crazy when they announced it.
Yeah, and if any of you were following camera stuff, then it was crazy because the only mirrorless cameras they had at the time was the R and the RP. And it was like, that was a huge jump from the R, which was like their like trial camera, essentially, proof of concept RF camera, to the R5, which was a serious professional hybrid. So that was absolutely massive. And it's, as I said, it still holds up. I remember talking about the A7R5, the Sony A7R5 when it came out. And in a lot of ways, they're very comparable cameras. And that 2.5 years later.
So it was...
I do want to add in, which I meant to talk about in the rules, was that, or the format, was that Brandon's going to talk about photo and video. So it's a mixture for him. And for me, I'm just going to be talking about video. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no worries.
Because it's a great photo camera.
Yes, and that really is the reason I bought it. I did not expect to shoot much video off of it, and then I did, and I was pretty blown away coming from the X-T3. Like, there was a pretty substantial jump in image quality, especially the autofocus. Even though we just talked about that, it's not that great.
But then
it was way better than the X-T3 and anything else that I had shot with. And I loved how reliable it was. My X-T3, as much as I loved it, like, it would glitch, it would freeze, it would do all that. And I never had any of those problems with the R5. So it did have some funky stuff with it, things that I didn't care for. But for the most part, the reason that's number 5 for me is just the reliability. I mean, the image quality was absolutely insane for photos. And it really just helped my professional photography career.
And then you wound up using it for video quite a bit. You were vlogging on it and using it for your channel and stuff. And now you have the R5C, which is, because I think you like the R5 so much, you wanted a more powerful video version of the R5, right?
Yeah, and I very specifically chose the R5 and not the R5C to make this list because, one, I haven't had the R5C long enough, I think, to really put it on a top 5 list. And there's enough quirks with the R5C, enough things where I can't rely on it, where I'm like, it's not going to fit on this list. It's obviously it's the R5, but just the battery life alone kind of throws some wrenches in there. But it's also awesome.
Yeah, the R5C is an interesting camera. So my experience with the R5, which I'll just say is not in my top 5 list, so I can just say that. I've had mixed feelings about it. I struggled with a lot of things with that camera in video. Of course, overheating until they somewhat recently fixed that. I would just always wish it had more dynamic range. I was shooting outside a lot, and it really made a difference for me. So yeah, I got it, and there's back and forth with that in Sony and trying to use it as a B cam to the C70 and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it still holds up really well. I'm really excited to see it keep getting worked on, and hopefully we'll see the R5 too. I think that will be mind-blowingly powerful.
I think that's going to be a gnarly camera.
For sure. All right, so
what do you got, Josh?
Number 5, I'm going with the Red Komodo. And so I can't really add it too high on the list.
That surprises me for sure.
Well, here's the thing. So we already talked about this. I owned it for a little while. And it's one of those cameras that when I sold it, I didn't want to sell it, and I have wanted one since. And so that to me says it's an important camera for me, and maybe I will get to use it in the future. I just cannot fit it in my workflow. There's just really no reason for it for what I do.
Yeah.
But it's super, like, if you haven't used one of those cameras before, they're just really fun. They're really cool. They're very different. The way the image looks and all that. And I just feel like when you shoot, it just looks like a movie. Like when you aim it at something, it just looks like a movie. I don't know how to describe it.
Yep. So, just point it at something, get your stuff right, and it looks amazing.
And like we said before, you guys said, you and Tyler were saying, like, you're going to love the image but hate the camera. And so I'm like, But I still would love to have one at some point in the future. So I had to add it to my top 5. But I don't have too much to add to it. I have a feeling it's going to exist in your top 5, but I wanted to throw it in there. All right. So number 4 for you, Brandon?
Number 4 for me is the Fuji X-T3. The first time I took that camera out, one, I'm a very visual person. I've said it many times on this podcast. Like, a camera has to look a certain way for me to go, I want to pick that up and use it. So even if that's not you, that's fine. That's just how I operate. So when I look at a camera, if it looks amazing, I know I'll at least pick it up. And if it sucks, then I'll return it or sell it or whatever. But the X-T3 just, it always looked super cool. I liked the dial experience. I was coming from a Canon M50, and the experience, the shooting experience, again, this was just for photography, was insane. And the value you got for your money out of that camera was bananas. $1,500, 4K 60, like, it was just an insane powerhouse of a camera. And the first photo shoot I did was my only wedding. It was for a buddy I do jujitsu with. And the first photo was of his kid in like a barbershop chair, and the colors just blew me away. And some of my favorite, best photos of all time have been taken on that camera, and I freaking loved it. Just loved it. But it was my only camera when I started doing more professional work, whether it was sports or fashion or something like that. The autofocus couldn't handle it, and that's why I sold it to move up to the R5. But other than that, freaking awesome camera.
That's awesome. I think it also sounds like it was a significant point of your career as well to have that camera, and that really like brought you up another level or two. So
I ended up using it for video for the first, when I started doing YouTube seriously in 2019. When was COVID? 2020. So
Yeah.
I guess 2019 and 2020, I used the X-T3 for all the YouTube videos. And so, and it was awesome. Yeah. It was a big camera in my career.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I know we probably don't like to use that word career, but you know what I'm talking about. So, all right. So my number 4 is the Sony A7 IV. And
Okay.
I think what you'll start to see with other than my number 5 pick, is that I really do like versatility and sort of like the ability to get a lot of things done with these cameras and for video. And the A7 IV, for the price, is just mind-blowingly good. It has its limitations, which I can't use in a lot of situations. You can't let it run forever. It will overheat. It has crop 4K 60, but the image coming out of that camera is so crispy. And it was the first Sony camera that I used that like I felt like the colors were like really accurate. Like even more
Every
so
time
than,
I talk to you about this camera, you just gush over it. So
yeah, I mean, I'm starting to go back and forth between the A7 IV and the FX3 for my client work, but it just looks good. It always looks good coming out of that camera, and it's just so easy to use. And just the price point, it's crazy for $2,500. Like, you know, it's a great camera. If you do photography, it's got like 33 megapixels and a ton of dynamic range in photo mode as well. And so even on paper, it has more dynamic range than the FX3 and A7S3. So like Cine D and Gerald, like they tested it, it's like a third or half a stop higher than those cameras. So it's pretty wild.
I know it was also like a favorite camera. I did a couple of community posts on like, what's your favorite camera brand and what's your favorite camera? And the A7 IV was up there. So a lot of the people in the community really like that camera.
And the same reason why the A7 III was probably one of the most popular cameras for several years, because it just does everything. That A7 line just is a hybrid camera. And so you grab that and you're like, I can do great photos, I can do great video. It kind of does everything in a decently priced package. I would love to see that get morphed into an FX camera. So just that doesn't overheat with like full frame 4K 60. I'd be very
I see
happy.
what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd be very
like
happy.
Like if the FX3 Mark II was kind of that sensor, and
yeah, I mean, either that sensor or just like a 6K sensor. Like I would like a little bit more resolution. I think like we've said before, 6K is kind of our sweet spot for the sweet spot, like we saw with like the Komodo and like the R3, the R6 II. Like they have that 6K image, which I think is cool if you get that oversampled. So anyways, that's my number 4, and it's a camera that I've bought and sold a few times, and I have one now, and I don't have any reason to sell it. Like, it's great. I use it it's just so versatile. Like, I can use it as a B cam, I can use it as an A cam, I can vlog with it, I can do client work with it. Like, I can literally do whatever with that camera, and it always looks good. So that's my number 4.
That's awesome.
Number 3.
Oh, sorry. I thought you're kind of the host of this thing, so I was just waiting on you.
Brandon, we did the rules, back and forth. Sorry, number 3.
Okay. Number 3 for me is. Okay,
You forgot?
I just wanted to check. I wrote it down. I wanted to make sure I didn't screw it up. Number 3 for me is a camera that I bet is going to be very high on your list, and that's the Canon C70.
I'm not telling you what's on my list till I get there, man.
I get it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be up there. It's a camera that every time I think about selling it, I'm like, no, you idiot, don't sell that camera.
I hear you.
Because it is just an absolute video freaking powerhouse. The image is absolutely insane that comes out of that. That DJI sensor is secret sauce for sure. Dynamic range, crazy. IO, crazy. Built-in NDs. Like, that camera just does everything. It saved my butt so many times. It's what I film this podcast on most of the time. I'm filming on my Komodo right now, but freaking C70. SD cards.
I know.
Raw face detection. Like, it just, Canon keeps making it better. I'm so glad I bought this camera. I think anybody thinking about grabbing an FX3 or a C70 would not go wrong if they bought the C70.
Yeah, I love the C70. I've talked about it plenty. It's one of those cameras that I don't currently own because I don't really need one right now because I can get away with a little bit cheaper cameras for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just is such a workhorse. Like, you pull it out of your bag, you don't need anything. Like, you could throw their standard battery lasts several hours. SD cards, has ND, XLR. Like, you just put a lens on it, you're ready to rock. So, yeah, workhorse for sure. I'm glad you picked one up. I remember we were talking about it. I was like, dude, you're gonna love it. Like, there's no.
Yeah.
I haven't heard many people that say they don't like that camera, other than maybe the form factor, because it is weird, and the build quality, and like we've all complained about. So
build quality is a little suspect, but like I said, I have had 0 issues with it, and I've had it since I want to say June or July. I honestly can't remember. But
well, you did send the screen in to get fixed, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I guess I did have that. Sorry, dude. This is what happens when you have brain injuries. Enough brain injuries, you just start forgetting whole chunks of your life. I had to send the screen in.
You also have too many cameras. You probably forgot. Let's just,
God, I think I'm up to 6 right now.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. So
C70, number 3.
Great pick. So my number 3 is probably going to be surprising. It's also a camera that Tom mentioned. So the EOS R. And
oh, wow.
Yes. So I want to talk about
Did I hear you correctly? The EOS R?
EOS R.
All
so
right.
This camera was massively important to me personally. I used this camera a lot. Like, it was, first of all, it was like the first camera that was like the newest one that I was able to buy. Like, I was working my way up because I started with the M50 and I tried out a couple other cameras. But when I bought the R, it was still like the current best mirrorless. Like, I was like, all right, I got the R, which like all the other YouTubers had, and I was really pumped about it. But I used the crap out of that camera in 2020. Like, I built my farming channel with that.
I was going to ask, is that kind of like the camera that you built the farming channel with?
Yeah, I mean, throughout 2019, I had several cameras I was trying to figure out, but a good chunk of 2020, including when COVID first started in March of 2020, I went daily for a month. And so it was interesting. Like, I learned a lot during that time. This is probably another thing to discuss anyways, but when everyone got really quiet when COVID started, social media just died. Like, no one knew what to talk about. No one knew what was like, can we just talk about our normal stuff? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be here every day. And like, it was awesome. But I remember falling in love with that camera just because I was using it so much. So I was shooting in 1080 and upscaling to 4K. And for me, it was just an important part of like my vlogging and farming channel, and just I started shooting in log with that camera, and like stuff like that where it like I felt like I was getting to another level, and I I leaned on it so hard. Like I did a lot of farm interviews and tours and stuff like that, and traveled with the camera. It was great. So I don't know, EOS R number 3.
That's awesome. All right.
So yeah, so
My
not high
number
on the
2?
spec list. Yeah, go for your number 2.
Well, I didn't know that. I'm that's pretty cool that you and Tom Buck share the EOS R.
EOS, EOS. I think there's a proper way to pronounce it. EOS.
I don't really care what the proper way is. I don't. All right. Should I move on to my number 2?
Yeah, let's do number 2.
My number 2 is this little camera right here. This is the Fuji X100V. This is just such an interesting camera. I really never thought about getting a fixed lens camera. And when I picked this up, it just changed the way I took photos and interacted in the spaces that I was in, how I connected with people. It's the first time I've ever put a camera into like full auto. It's so small and portable. I was just like, pull it out of the jacket, get a couple photos, put it back in, and having the film simulations in the camera, like they look great. So I'm not spending hours editing. And so I just get to enjoy the people and the places that I'm in even more. And that's super important. But it's also just fun. It's hard to explain. Like, the images look great. It's like a social media camera for me. It could be much more if I wanted it to. But I wanted to get it to be that fast, small, unobtrusive, fun little camera. And it just ticks all the boxes. And it's so much fun to use. It's like hard to understate how fun this camera is. What's really interesting is like when I went to Yosemite, that's normally a trip where I would take my R5 and I would take 3 or 4 lenses to get all of the things, and I took just this. And that was actually a pretty scary proposition. But I have no regrets about going and doing that entire trip with just the X100V, and the photos that came out of it were awesome. So
I've heard so many people talk about that camera, and I've never put my hands on that camera, but I think what you're saying is the simplicity, the how small it is, the simulations, and you can just does that connect with your phone like pretty easily? Do I remember that correctly?
no, God, the app.
No, oh, it's not good. Okay, never mind.
Well, it's funny because like this camera really is like if you use it in full auto, kind of like a point and shoot. I mean, obviously it's got manual controls, but that's why I use it, isn't like in full auto, so it is fast. And then ironically, the most frictioned part of the entire system has nothing to do with the camera. It's the app. Like Fuji's known for having just like the most god awful app ever made.
Does anyone make a good app other than Red? Does anyone else like make a good app?
Yeah, all of them kind of suck, you know?
So
like there are some that are better than others, but for the most part. But Fuji's is like bar none.
Okay.
It's just a shitstorm.
So when you say social media camera, like do you use it for personal stuff as well, or like?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like my important family moment camera. And my wife recently just got me like an SD card reader that plugs into your phone. So that's actually faster
Than using the app.
And because you're essentially doing all the post-processing in the camera before you even start, and then you can save all of these profiles. Like I've got some on here that just every time I shoot with them, I'm like, damn, that looks super good. So as soon as I'm done doing whatever I want, I just plug the card in, import the few that I want, and then I'm done. And it's just a fast, effortless like process. And man, there's nothing worse than like sitting on your computer for like 2 or 3 hours at the end of the day, like going through photos and then like, you know, trying to edit each one. So it's just made my life so much better. And I think when I go travel with my family, I think sometimes they're like, hey, can you just stop working? Because I have a big camera with a big lens that's pointed in their face. And when I bust this out, it's just like, you know, it doesn't have that same feeling. And so I think you catch more of those types of moments on that type of camera.
That's cool. I've considered picking that camera up several times. Of course, you can't even buy it anymore. So,
Dude, I have like 35 offers for it right now in the Facebook marketplace. So
you're trying to sell it right now? Is that what you're saying?
we don't know. I don't know, Josh. God damn it.
All right. Well,
know.
that's a whole other thing. Yeah, but for me, I would say I'm intrigued by that camera because if I grab that, it is the opposite of work for me. There is no way I'm going to use that to create content for YouTube or
Exactly.
yeah. So I've been really tempted several times to invest in a camera like that maybe would force me to start taking photos with my family. 'Cause
Maybe
I always just use
will
my
bring
phone.
it to NAB. Maybe I'll
Okay.
bring it to NAB and you can use it over the weekend.
Yeah, I still don't like taking photos, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe
Well,
I'll-
then never mind, Josh.
I don't know what it is. Very cool, man. So should we go on to number 2? My number 2?
Yeah, fire
Okay.
away.
It's funny as you were talking because we didn't tell each other our numbers, like our
No, we
list.
wanted it to be a surprise.
So as you started going, I'm trying to like eliminating cameras, like what's left in Brandon's list, you know?
Yeah.
So my number 2 is the Sony FX3. Probably no surprise to anybody. That camera
I got him right. Not
was-
to interrupt you, but like the top 2, I was like, it's got to be these 2 cameras.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I know your number 1 as well, but we'll get to that. So the FX3 to me has been the camera that just always, it can do anything video related. Like if you're going to pick the most versatile camera, right, it can do vlogging, it can do A-cam stuff, it can do interviews, it has XLR ports, it's full frame, it has IBIS in it, insane low light, great dynamic range. Like it literally checks every box. There's some, I mean, no camera's perfect, but it's one of those cameras where if I have it in my kit, it will get used. Like grab an FX3.
It's pretty damn close.
It's pretty close. And I do really prefer it over the A7S III. I know some people have preferences for that. And for me, I don't use the EVF for many things. I do like how it's smaller. I do like the tally lights. I like the dedicated video buttons are on the camera. And it's just, I mean, it's not a cheap camera. It's $3,900, but it really does do whatever you need it to do. And so that's why, as I said earlier, it's going to be versatility for me. So FX3, yeah, I love that camera.
I know it's high up on Thomas's list, Thomas K that also did the video.
Yep,
He loves his FX3. I only had it for a few weeks and I was thoroughly impressed with it. It was so much fun to use because it was so easy. It was like, just like click this button, point it at my face, and I know everything will be perfect. That's
the
pretty cool.
autofocus is insane on the Sony camera. So
good.
So good.
The dynamic range on that camera is amazing too.
Yeah, and one thing that I think some people are talking about, but the S-Log3 curve in the FX3 like is great. Like it has a really nice roll off to it that I find to be a lot more natural than some of the other cameras. And so yeah, even when you push the highlights up to the top, like it doesn't just clip out to white. Like it is softer.
It doesn't
for
just
sure.
like.
Yep.
It's got some leeway. Yeah, such a
Yeah.
great camera. Good pick,
It is.
Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I have some complaints about that camera, of course. Like the sensor can be a little bit noisy. Most people don't see it when you put it in YouTube, but it's a very sensitive sensor. Like that's because it has the ability to shoot up to 12,800 is its second base. So yeah, and it's Netflix approved.
Without a firmware.
No, there was a firmware that.
Oh, was
that,
it a firmware that got it over the hump?
Yeah, the FX3 Netflix firmware. That was version 2, I believe. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
anyways, so that's mine, and I do own the FX3 right now, and I do use it, a few times a week. So it is
I will
important camera
definitely
for me.
probably buy another one.
Yeah, I think it's probably not a bad call for you at some point, but you're much more in the Canon world with your lenses and with your Komodo as well. So
We'll see.
it's hard, man. All right, so number 1.
Josh, you just might as well tell the people what my number 1 is.
It's the camera you're shooting on right now, right?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
Red Komodo. 100%. This camera is like, I don't know. You're gonna have to pry it from my cold dead hands camera. It's so odd because like when we preface this video, it's not the best camera. There's so many people that hate the Red Komodo because of how like limited it is. And I would agree. I don't pick it up for all of the shoots that I need to do.
Right.
But my God, is there some special sauce in this camera. It's the most fun video camera I have. Like anytime I walk by it and I see it on my shelf, I just like kind of giggle. I'm like, God, I should go shoot something right now. It's so small. I'll put on like this tiny little wooden handle, like a really tiny lens, one wheel over to the skate park and shoot something of the skaters and like send it to them later. And they're just like, Jesus Christ, this looks amazing. So, and it's also a camera that I bought because I thought, hey, like, and I know I'm going to get so much hate in the comments for this, but it was a camera that I felt like, hey, if you get this, it is pretty limited. It's going to help. It's going to force you to get better at lighting and cinematography. And it has. Not only it forced me, but it inspired me to pursue those things even more. Just something about it. I was like, you know what? This camera has so much potential. I need to get as good as I can to take advantage of that. And I'm far from it. But there's just not too many cameras that inspire me to that level where I'm like, I want to stick with this camera forever. I want to learn everything I want to, know about it just so I can take advantage of how powerful it is. And the Komodo to me is that camera.
I completely get it. As I said, my limited use, I got it on my system and not like I want to use it more, but yeah, it is one of those cameras that inspires you to go out and shoot things with it. And it is a slow camera. It is complicated in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. You have to be much more deliberate with it, but it gives it back for what the time and energy you put into it. And yeah, there's definitely something special about it. And we said this before about the Komodo, is the fact that you can get a Red for $6,000 is pretty crazy. That shoots, great image quality, and you get all that stuff. And that camera was not designed to be a, filmmaking camera. That was a crash cam. And people are like, wait, we can use this for like they, so yeah, awesome pick.
One thing,
go ahead.
Real quick, something that a lot of people don't understand about this camera, maybe because they've never used it, I don't know. They're like, it's a horrible YouTube camera. I strongly disagree, just because of the app. The app makes it possible that I can put it in so many weird areas, put it on a slider, put it on my Edelkrone, do it over a head rig. The app makes it so I can film myself so much easier than any other camera I have. Like, bar none. I can set the focus, put face detect on it. Like, I can change so many things. The app alone makes this camera like an awesome studio camera, honestly.
So I had mentioned that earlier. There's like the only software that I like is the Red software. So the thing that a lot of people don't like it for YouTube because it's slow. It doesn't have like the audio input that some of these other cinema cameras might have. Autofocus, of course, is a huge thing. Like, it's not going to be reliable like some of these other cameras. So I don't know. If you're using manual focus, like, are you using manual focus right now, Brandon?
I'm using manual focus right now, but if I put the center autofocus on there, it's awesome. The face detect is not great. Like right now, if I put it up, if you're looking on my screen, it would pick up the skull. It would like lock onto that as a face rather than my face. But if I just put the center autofocus on there, it would work like a champ.
Yeah,
move around. I'm super fidgety. Like, I'm moving around all the time, so I didn't want to like screw with you guys.
Yeah, so when I was using it, I was using the center weight autofocus, and I was just sitting in the center, and it was good. Like, I don't think it really messed up very often. So, all right.
But that's my number one, the Red Komodo.
And I think also what's really cool about the Komodo, there's a lot of things, but I think that having an RF mount is really cool because it just lets you use anything. Like, you can literally use any lens for the most part, and you get to use all the RF L lenses too, which are beautiful, are stable. A lot of them are stabilized. So a lot of options.
It's really versatile. I mean, we didn't even talk about like the R3D codec.
Yep.
The size is ridiculous. Battery life on this thing is absolutely ridiculous. Like, and Red does an awesome job of continually pushing firmware updates to it. So, fantastic freaking camera.
And the price has not gone up.
Yeah, the price hasn't gone up, which is crazy. The sensor is a weird wide, it's only 1.33. And if you put a speed booster on there, it's actually bigger than full frame. So, yeah, like there's a lot of upsides to it other than the slowness of it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so you probably know what my number one is now that we've gone through all the lists.
The C70.
C70, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely... I have to say it's the camera that I regretted selling the most, and I've bought and sold it a few times. Every time I'm like, I don't want to sell this, but I'm like, at the time I needed the money to buy something else for testing, comparison. For what I was using it for a while ago, I was doing some documentary type work for my farming channel. It is an amazing documentary camera. Like,
yes,
it really is amazing. Like, you don't need much, and the battery life, I could go out on a farm with like one big battery and be out all day with like the 15 to 35 on there, and that's all I, and a microphone or two, and like that's all I needed, and I was like ready to rip. So the versatility, the workhorseness, the fact they keep updating it, all the stuff we already talked about on when you'd mentioned the C70. I just think whatever you pointed at looks good. Like, it just looks good. Like, there's very little you have to do for grading. I think it does a great job with people. I think one of the big complaints that people have about the C70 is it is a little bit softer than some of the other modern 4K cameras, but it's just got a look to it. And I think that really does help when you're shooting people in particular. I think it just looks great for interviews and documentaries and that kind of stuff. And just the versatility. So
such a fantastic camera. My God, that thing is so good.
it is. The main issue I have with the C70 is what do you pair with the C70? Because in the Canon
the lensing
ecosystem,
is the hardest.
and the bodies, and the other thing is like, okay, you can shoot C-Log 2, and then you pick up like an R5 or an R5C, and you're shooting in C-Log 3, and even when you're shooting in C-Log, if you shot both in C-Log 3, they still look different because they're different cameras, even though they're both Canon, and I mean they're similar, but that was always a tricky part for me, was finding a B cam. I think if I was doing like a ton of documentary work or like just a lot of corporate interviews, I'd probably just buy two C70s. That's probably what I wind up doing.
What do you have any honorable mentions?
I don't, Brandon. You had asked me to get honorable mentions, and I know you have at least one.
I just have one, and I was
Okay.
going to say the FX3.
Okay.
That was my honorable mention. So
Okay.
maybe that was super anticlimactic.
You didn't present that very well. You're like, I just want to give an honorable mention.
No, I mean, like, the reason I didn't put it in there is I just simply didn't have enough time with it.
Yeah, I guess my number 5, the Komodo, could have been just an honorable mention because I didn't have it for that long. But I was having trouble picking 5 cameras, Brandon. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's tough. Maybe it's tougher if you only shoot video. So I don't know. But I thought I actually was very surprised to hear the Komodo was on your list, and it made me happy. Made me happy.
Well, I had my like top 4 picked out, and then I was like, number 5 has got to be a camera that like when you sell it, you really want to keep it. Like I really would love to have that, but I can't have
Yeah.
$6,000 sitting there that I don't use very often. I do want to use my cameras, so hopefully you guys found this interesting, and us, Brandon and I, talking about our favorite cameras. Maybe you have some of those favorite cameras are on your list, and if not, let us know down below.
I was just gonna say that, yeah, if you didn't see the community stuff, if you didn't get the poll and you want to like chime in, we will definitely. I can't wait to talk to you about your favorite camera. So post it down below and let us know why. Josh, were there any cameras that we didn't talk about that you think people will flip their lids over, like a Panasonic GH6 or something like that?
Oh, I'm sure there's like every camera ever that we didn't mention needs, people are gonna.
The 5D Mark II, the 5D Mark IV, Panasonic GH6, Panasonic EVA1.
Yeah, there's a lot of cameras out there.
Jared Poland's going to come back in and say Pentax. We're going to be like, get the f out of here, Jared.
All right, we didn't say the word podcasts again, so I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast.
Podcast is great. This was
Okay.
an excellent podcast, Josh. You really knocked it
And
out
if
of the
you-
park with this podcast.
And if you'd like to be included in future podcasts, please send us an email with a video or something like that, or a comment. Definitely let us send in some videos. We'd love to include your comments and topic ideas and those sorts of stuff. We're having a great time. We appreciate all of you. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys real soon.
Peace out.